minutes of the meeting on the 15th of November 23.
Move them, Chair.
Thank you, James. Second?
Second them, Chair.
Thank you, Susan. Can we agree the minutes are a correct record? I can confirm that the minutes are agreed. Item 3, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations from members? No? Item 4, Quarter 2, 23-24 Performance Management Report of the Chief Executive. Can I ask Steve Evans, Head of Corporate Affairs, to present the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Steve Evans, Head of Corporate Affairs. The report sets out progress towards the targets and outcomes which were established in the Council plan and signed off by Council in February 2023. The information in the report is based on performance up until the end of September 2023. One point I'd like to make is Cabinet recently asked for the report to be revised to make it more transparent for public and partners. I'm pleased to say that we've made progress in terms of doing this, and the report includes a series of dashboards. In Quarter 1, it was the first outing for that report, and it subsequently went on to scrutiny. I'm pleased to say that scrutiny fed back very positively about the style of the reports, and that puts us on a good footing in terms of achieving the requirements for a more transparent report. Overall, performance remains strong across the organisation, and I think that's an absolute testament to the work that's going on, particularly in the light of in terms of demographic changes and demands to services alongside inflation. The main performance report is attached at Appendix 2 of the report. There's an executive summary which sets out the detail in relation to some of the key items. And then later on in the report, there's greater degree of detail aligned to the dashboards. The performance report will go from this meeting onto scrutiny, where it will be put under further scrutiny by members of those panels, and feedback will be incorporated into the Q3 report. Cabinet are asked to note the contents of the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Steve. I'll just make a few comments before inviting Cabinet members to make any comments pertinent to their portfolios. Can I thank Steve and his team for this detailed and comprehensive update on our performance against the targets and actions set out in the Council plan. The positive feedback from scrutiny about the new format of the performance report is welcome and noted. The improved transparency is something that this administration is championing. Notably, the Council continues to deliver strong performance alongside a sharp delivery focus for our service users, communities and partners. This is despite the challenges and additional demands created by the impact of the current cost of living squeeze. My Cabinet colleagues may wish to highlight particular aspects of this report associated with their own portfolios, but there are a number of areas I would like to highlight first. In terms of areas where we're performing well, I was pleased to note that in relation to the environment, for example, the latest figures show a further 4 percentage points reduction in CO2 emissions in 22-23, which is very pertinent given the COP conference that's going on elsewhere. Recycling is a very important part of our environmental strategy, so it's pleasing to note that campaigns and increased enforcement activity has led to the contamination rate of non-recyclable material put into household recycling bins reducing for the 4th successive quarter. This is almost 5 points lower than the same period last year. Consistent with our priorities of supporting the most vulnerable, focused efforts have been made by the Council to address the local impact of national shortages of children's social workers. I'm pleased to say that the vacancy rate has fallen due to 40 newly qualified social workers joining the Council following successful recruitment campaigns during the year. Availability of good housing is another focus for the Council, and during Quarter 2, more houses were built due to larger construction schemes seeing quicker completion rates for some of their builds, and more empty houses were brought back into use. Both indicators were higher than their profile targets. We continue to tackle fly tipping through proactive action against perpetrators, and the number of incidents remains low and significantly better than our statistical neighbours. However, the report highlights a few areas requiring our attention, where a range of issues where our performance has not been what we would like it to be. In terms of requiring attention, where I know action is and will continue to be taking, I would note in particular the national shortage of educational psychologists to undertake education and healthcare plans means that we are not meeting our obligations to assess cases within the 20-week target. The service is implementing plans to build capacity to meet shortages of educational psychologists and significant growth in demand. The approach will ensure that children are supported with quality provision in an appropriate setting. There are a range of other areas to note which are summarised in the executive summary of the main performance report in Appendix 2 at paragraphs 4 to 64, and greater detail is contained within the respective chapters and dashboards. With that, I propose that Cabinet notes the report. Are there any other Cabinet members wishing to speak on items relevant to their area? Councillor Scott.
Yes, thank you, Chair. In May 2020, we set out our ambition to create an inclusive economy where people can truly thrive and prosper. For the very first time in the life of this County Council, we now have an inclusive economic strategy which sets out our vision and a plan to make it happen. To ensure that people have access to good jobs and to cement our status in the region as a great place to do business, I just want to highlight a few key points. We are building a solid tourism base and cultural offer, with our tourism economy valued at over £1 billion last year for the first time. Clearly the strategy is working. We are seeing healthy demand for development land, demonstrating our strong potential in the county. We're linking our employability support and skills provision to our key sectors and seeing more people than ever achieving higher level qualifications. We're currently preparing an investment plan so that we can be certain we are maximising opportunities regionally, nationally and globally. All in all, Chair, things are finally starting to move in the right direction in County Durham, and I'd just like to end by thanking our incredible staff team for all their hard work in this area.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you, Chair. There's been a lot of great work going on across my portfolio, which is very much the operational side of the council, or the engine room as I like to call it. Nothing stands still, and with Darren now retiring this month, he's been replaced by Sarah Armstrong. Sarah will be joining my two other heads of service, Vicky Murray and Marion Ingleby, both of whom have been appointed to their roles within the last year. And it's really great to see even more women being appointed to senior roles within the council. On the digital side of the business, we now have over 175,000 households with a registered Do Online council account, and 36% of our contacts are done digitally. This helps us to improve efficiency and performance and provides us with the agility and flexibility that we need in directing our resources. And from a customer satisfaction point of view, more than 3/4 of our customers who gave us a 5-star rating, gave us a 5-star rating. Durham County Council continues to be the lead council for social value, ensuring that our communities benefit from the money we spend as an authority, and a social value requirement is included in all the contracts we let. And in procurement terms, to date we've undertaken 100 more procurement processes compared to the same period last year, and increased spending by £51 million, which is approximately 15%. Over 60% of businesses benefiting from our spending are SMEs, and with those SMEs we've increased spending by 1.33%. It doesn't sound a lot, but it actually equates to an increase of over £36 million in monetary terms. And our County Durham spend has increased slightly by around 0.98%, which again doesn't sound a lot, but equates to 26.42 million. Last but by no means least, our sales team won the National Award at the Association of Public Service Excellence for the commercialisation and entrepreneurship for how we sell some of our services and SLAs. I could say a lot more, Chair, but I really don't have the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Any other Cabinet member wishing to speak? Councillor Wilkes.
Thanks, Chair, and you've stolen my thunder a little bit on some things which I was going to mention, so I apologise if I repeat a few. I'd like to say a huge thank you to our low carbon team, which we as the Joint Administration have supported and placed into the core of all decision making, including within our corporate management team, and with Steve McDonald, the new low carbon manager, and the people around him, we really are seeing some amazing improvements. Our low carbon depot at Morrison Busty has been decarbonised, and going forward, this is going to save the council as much as £750,000 a year. We've decarbonised heating at Abbey Leisure Centre and will soon complete the same at Newton Aycliffe, Teesdale and Peterlee Leisure Centres, which going forward will give us the opportunity for innovative ways to save even more money. New business management systems for our energy use at Louisa Centre in Stanley and St John's in Seaham are also paying dividends. And we've been confirmed as the best council in the region for tackling climate change and one of the highest in the country in terms of our communication and involvement with residents and partners, securing more grants from government since taking over from Labour than they ever did for tackling climate change. I'm delighted, as both a Liberal Democrat and a member of the joint administration, at the progress we are making and in so many areas for the benefit of our residents, and look forward to continue to tackle these difficult issues. I'd also like to remind colleagues that our warden teams are doing a better job than in any time in the existence of this local authority, tackling fly tipping and other environmental crimes at levels we could have only dreamed of under the previous administration. Fly tipping is still at record lows in our county, down 35% since we took over, and with our fines at record highs and Labour's fly tipper discounts scrapped, residents can be reassured that we have ended the soft touch approach which Labour had. Our efforts to tackle the significant contamination of recycling, which you've mentioned, that we were left with, are now seeing improvements that we wanted, with falls in contamination rates in each of the last 5 quarters. And we continue to have one of the highest recycling rates in the region, which we will continue to work to improve. And our refuse teams are doing a sterling job, including during the recent snow, and I applaud them for their work. Chair, as we go into the Christmas period, we continue to provide our 12 household waste recycling centres, which will be open every day apart from Christmas Day and New Year's Day. And I'm also delighted to confirm that residents can now renew their garden waste contracts at the same low cost as last year, including households in Teesdale that you'll be happy with, who we started providing the service to earlier this year, with over 2,000 having already signed up to that part of the county. Could I wish you and everyone else a Merry Christmas, and I'll be delighted to continue the hard work into the new year, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkes. Councillor Hood.
Thank you, Chair. I'm keen to speak to the report in relation to adult social care, which features heavily. Our adult social care senior management team continuously monitor our performance in relation to assessments and reviews. We have also invested in new mobile technology to support staff with the assessment process, and also in additional staffing resources to strengthen our approach to completing reviews. I'm pleased that the percentage of older people still at home 91 days after discharge from hospital into reablement remains high. However, staff in the commissioning service are undertaking a review to see how we can further improve capacity to provide reablement to more people. I look forward to bringing further updates to Cabinet in due course, and thank the team.
Thank you, Councillor Hood. Councillor Shield.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Alan Shield, Cabinet Member for Equality and Inclusion and Member Lead for Poverty and Welfare. The revised Performance Management Report is an excellent information-based document, providing easily accessible information, and I make no apologies for saying this, which is intelligence-led, evidence-based, providing the foundation and guidance on decision-making considerations by this Council. However, on reflection specifically relating to the homelessness information, it is incumbent that the accompanying narrative and graphical displays correlate, providing the full and comprehensive background and reasoning for previous, current and future attainments. This has been relayed to the relevant Corporate Directorate and the Head of Corporate Affairs, who will consider and implement any potential improvements. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Shield. Councillor Rowlandson.
Thank you, Chair. Can I firstly thank officers for a comprehensive and well laid out and illuminating report. Although our leisure centres appear at first glance to still be struggling to gain ground lost during the COVID years, the figures in reality reflect the work being carried out in our leisure transformation across several sites, which have had an effect on the figures. The cost of living crisis continues to have a real effect on our communities, but it is pleasing to report that the overall membership to our leisure centres is only 543 below target out of a total of 18,748. The launch of our new leisure membership has had a positive effect, and the new attractions coming to fruition now will, I'm sure, will improve the take-up. Chair, can I also highlight in the report the continued inward investment in Durham with new infrastructure and business parks. The taking to the market of our ambitious plans for Akeley Heads and our over £60 million investment in Net Park is creating a good deal of interest from around established companies in Durham, but also from new companies from around the North East and the world who now see Durham as the place to be. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Rowlandson, and finally Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome the breadth of the report and the information it contains about the services across the Council. Against the background of very high demands for services in my portfolio, a challenging time for families and significant cost pressures, I welcome the progress we are making to support service improvements and better outcomes for the children and young people. It is very good to see that we have very high levels of positive feedback from parents, the carers, children and young people about our early help services. I welcome the work done across social care services to improve a number of aspects of services delivery, including increasing assessment completed within expected timescales, the focused work to try and keep more children in family settings, and the comprehensive support to the unaccompanied asylum-seeking children who are new to the county. In education, it is important we continue to work with schools and other learning settings to help children to attend and achieve, and I welcome the continued focus on increasing uptake of early education entitlement for 3 to 4 year-olds, and the work done to support young people into further education, employment and the training. I also welcome the continued emphasis on recruitment, retention and workforce development and the comprehensive learning and support we give to all our staff. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Can I ask Cabinet to note the report? Agreed. Thank you. Item 5, Adult Social Care Update on the introduction of Local Health Authority Assessment by the Care Quality Commission under the Health and Care Act 2022. Report of the Corporate Director of Adult and Health Services. Could I ask Lee Alexander, Head of Adult Care, to present the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. This report outlines the latest developments associated with the Local Authority Care Quality Commission assessment proposals and provides an update on the Government's plan for care and support reform. On the 1st of April 2023, CQC regulatory powers came into effect, as detailed in the report that came into Cabinet on the 12th of July 2023. The assessment of the local authority made by CQC is based on a single assessment framework which is used to assess all types of services in all health and social care sectors at all levels. And further details can be seen in the report as well as on the CQC website. CQC required that all local authorities complete a self-assessment which details the local authority's current position, reflecting the quality statements, highlighting key successes and identifying any mitigating actions being taken to address the most pressing risks. This has been created in line with guidance that was outlined by the Local Government Association and the Association of Directors of Adult Social Care. And the publication entitled Getting Ready for Assurance, a guide to support the development of your adult social care self-assessment. Points 34 to 38 outline the CQC process in preparation for the upcoming assessments. CQC have now completed their pilot assessments into 5 local authorities, which are follows: Birmingham City, Lincolnshire County, North Lincolnshire, Nottingham City and Suffolk County. All of those, with the exception of Nottingham, received an indicative good rating. Nottingham was require improvement. Within those pilot assessments, there was some similar themes that were found. Those themes included outcomes for people were better where there was good partnership working. Integrated working around discharging people from hospital was working and had improved the flow out of hospitals. Staff tended to stay with local authorities when they felt valued, had learning and development opportunities, and where there was a positive culture. There were different practices noted across the 5 local authorities in question and how they worked with young people who were transitioning from children's services to adult services. So young people's experiences were varied. Following the pilot assessments, CQC have identified areas that they need to improve to ensure that their assessment approach is as efficient and as effective as possible. And these include simplifying the information return from local authorities, reviewing their case tracking process, and developing how they engage with the public through community and voluntary groups. Key highlights from the pilots are as follows. The local authority will be asked for 50 cases, to which CQC will take a random sample. CQC will focus on waiting lists. They'll carry out a range of interviews with a variety of our staff, and they will contact local authorities between 9 to 11 weeks prior to undertaking their assessment activity. CQC aims to complete 20 further assessments initially and report these and publish their individual ratings from early 2024 onwards. We don't know yet, but we are expecting to learn of those 20 authorities imminently. A rating of all local authorities will then be published over the next 2 years. In preparation for the upcoming CQC assessment, Durham County Council continues to provide assurance regarding their adult social care duties under Part 1 of the Care Act in several different ways. This includes attending the North East Association of Directors of Adult Social Services, their regional meetings with other local authorities, as well as contributing and informing a development activity through a range of subgroups of that particular body. Reviewing and improving our waiting lists, undertaking case file audit activity, and regular reviews of our data and performance. To aid the completion of the self-assessment, we've carried out engagement work. This includes sending out surveys to cabinet members and other elected members, to service users, to carers, to staff, to various leaders and to partners and other stakeholders. And that's captured the views of a wider variety of people, which in turn has helped to inform the content of our quality statements and the self-assessment. And points 73 to 75 provide further details around the surveys. Additionally, officers have attended a healthcare engagement forum to gather service user views and to share with them information about the assurance activity. We've also attended Health and Wellbeing Board Development Day to capture additional evidence to include in the self-assessment. All feedback received has informed the quality statements and the self-assessment documentation. Areas for improvement were identified and an action plan has been put in place. There are 9 quality statements in total, which provide an initial view about current performance. Subject matter leads have completed themed areas of the quality statements, and these were replayed both internally, quite expansively, and externally using an ADAS associate. The self-assessment methodology was signed off by Jane Robinson, our Corporate Director, and the self-assessment has been replayed within the Quality Assurance Board to the ADAS Associate, while it's also been reviewed and subsequently approved by myself as Head of Adult Care and the Corporate Director. And it's now going through the process of being shared with the likes of our portfolio holder, Councillor Hood, our Oversight and Assurance Group, Overview and Scrutiny, to Cabinet in January, to Chief Officers meetings and to the Care Partnership Executive. We have a robust communication plan in place which focuses on internal and external communications, and point 85 to 90 in the report provide more detail on that. In conclusion, there's been a significant amount of work undertaken, and that continues to be undertaken in preparation for this assessment process. This report is for Cabinet to note, and a further report, as I've stated, will follow early in the new year with details of the actual self-assessment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Lee. Could I ask Councillor Chris Hood, Cabinet Member for Adult and Health Services, to speak to the report?
Thank you, Chair. And can I thank Lee Alexander and the wider team for compiling the report and for the update. It's clear from the report that an immense amount of preparation has happened since the last update to Cabinet relating to the implementation of the CQC Local Authority Assessment Framework, and that from the 1st of April 2023, the CQC's regulatory powers came into effect. Preparation for the upcoming CQC assessment continues to progress, and I'm particularly pleased to note the improved processes for governance and oversight that provides members and executive management team assurance of how we are meeting the responsibilities to discharge the adult social care duties under Part 1 of the Care Act. As outlined in this report, significant work has been undertaken in preparation for this assessment process. This includes working in conjunction with the other local authorities across the North East ADAS footprint, developing thought processes, sharing learning, and providing mutual support. I look forward to bringing further updates to Cabinet in due course. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hood. Is there anyone else wishing to speak? No, in which case can I ask Cabinet to note the report? Thank you. Item 6, high needs block funding for special educational needs and development and inclusion support, joint report of the Corporate Director of Children and Young People Services and Corporate Director of Resources. Can I ask John Pearce, Corporate Director, Children and Young People Services, to present the report?
Thank you, Chair. This report provides Cabinet with an update on the high needs block, progress with our sustainability programme, and an outline of the Delivering Better Value programme, which is funded by the Department for Education. Around 1 in 6 of our children and young people have a recognised additional need and rely on specialist support to help them with their needs and prepare them for adulthood. Demand and complexity has continued to increase, and there are ongoing pressures in our high needs block, as is the case with many local authorities across the country. Our overspends in the high needs block did reduce in recent years, and at the end of last financial year we reported a small underspend. Our high needs block grant allocation for this financial year is just under £90 million, around 12% higher than in the previous year, which in part reflects ongoing increases in demand, a period of very high inflation and higher pay awards for staff. Our current forecast for this financial year is an overspend of £2.1 million, largely due to additional top-up funding requests from schools and early years settings at the start of the new academic year. Despite the demand and inflation pressures, Government have signalled a return to much lower increases in grant in coming years and have asked us to plan based on an increase of 4% next year and 3% in the years after that. When we project this forward over future years, the gap between government grant and estimated expenditure based on local need would lead to a cumulative deficit for us of £67.5 million by the end of March 2028, representing a funding gap of £57 million from the current position. Clearly, this is a serious concern for us, as is the case for many local authorities across the country. Recent report by the County Council Network provided research which estimated accrued deficits across local authorities of £2.4 billion in 22-23, and this increasing to £3.6 billion by 2025. The exceptional accounting override that allows councils to exclude high needs budget deficits from their main general fund, revenue fund is due to end in March 26, at which point the high needs block deficit may need to be funded from council resources. The report goes into detail on our initial high needs block sustainability programme, which came to an end in the summer this year, and describes the next phase of our work following involvement with the National Delivering Better Value programme. We had asked to move into wave 2 of this programme, and this enabled us to do additional work between January and June, and our £1 million grant application to government has now been approved. We will be using this extra funding to focus on 3 priority areas to give the biggest benefit: identifying and meeting needs early, revisiting and strengthening our graduated approach, and improving transition and reintegration into mainstream schools. Following a well-attended stakeholder event in June, we have now developed these into 3 work streams, and a delivery plan commenced from October. Oversight of the programme of work and monthly tracking of expenditure will continue to be through the Send and Inclusion Resources Board, and the High Needs Block is also discussed at each meeting of the Schools Forum. The recommendations for Cabinet are included in the report in paragraph 14. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, John. Can I ask Councillor Ted Henderson, Cabinet Member for Children and Young People's Services, to speak to the report?
Thank you, Chair. We're aware of the previous reports on the high needs block and the quarterly financial problems that there are. Significant financial pressures in this, which has seen a demand and complexity continue to increase since COVID. When we last looked at this in Cabinet in April 22, the overspend was substantially reduced since the launch of the High Needs Sustainability Programme in 2019. We also saw, at the end of the last financial year, and for the first time since 2015, there was a small underspend in the high needs block. As welcomed as this was, we must recognise that we still face a challenge with increased demand and sustained high levels of inflation. This is reflected in the report and in the latest update forecast for this year, which now shows spend will exceed the grant by £2.1 million, increasing the overall deficit from £8.6 million to £10.8 million. In the last couple of years, the Department of Education did recognise these cost pressures to a degree in our annual grant, and also launched the Delivering Better Value in Send programme, which we joined in January this year. I am pleased that all the work on this and engagement with a range of stakeholders has led to us being awarded £1 million of extra funding to deliver a new programme over the next 18 months. An important part of this work was planning ahead and looking at the estimated grant from the government and our expected expenditure in coming years. The report carefully sets this out, but leaves us with a very concerning picture of a significant growth overspend in the coming years, an anticipated much lower grant increase from the government. As the report sets out, we know this is the situation for many other local authorities, and hope the government will respond to the feedback they have had from ourselves, as this situation is simply not sustainable. Whilst the financial situation is very I welcome the programme we have made with the previous programme of work, and hope that the plans set out in the report come to fruition to help mitigate some of the cost pressures we are currently facing. I support the findings in the report and all the recommendations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Is there anyone else wishing to speak? Can I ask Cabinet to note the report then and the recommendations in paragraph 14? Thank you. Item 7, Think Autism in County Durham, Strategy Update Report, Joint Report of Corporate Director of Children and Young People's Services and Corporate Director of Adult and Health Services. Can I ask John Pearce, Corporate Director, Children and Young People's Services, to present the report?
Thank you, Chair. So this report presents our refreshed all-age autism strategy for the county. It is the second all-age strategy after the Health and Wellbeing Board in Cabinet previously approved one in spring 2019. Following the disruption of the COVID pandemic, which was very challenging for many autistic people, the priorities in the strategy were revisited and 6 new work groups created to look at key areas. The impact of autism on individuals and their families can be far-reaching due to the difficulties people may experience with social communication, interaction and thinking. This joint approach to autism therefore extends across children and adult services, health, housing and social care, education and training and the criminal justice system. It is aligned with the updated national strategy which came out in 2021. The updated strategy was presented to the Health and Wellbeing Board in September and is included as an appendix to this report, along with a short presentation which highlights some of the key points. Although some of the language has changed to reflect research and discussion with autistic people and their families, the vision has largely remained the same. For all autistic people to live fulfilling and rewarding lives within a society that accepts and understands them. We want autistic people of all ages to access advice and support as needed and to be treated fairly so that they can be an equal part of their local community, get the right support, develop their skills and independence, and have good mental and physical health. While the prevalence rate of people on the autism spectrum in County Durham is still reported to be around 1%, local data shows an increasing prevalence and greater demand for autism assessments and support amongst both children and adults. Autism is now the primary need highlighted in 35% of all education, health and care plans for young people with additional needs. The recommendations for Cabinet are covered in the report in paragraph 7. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, John. Can I invite Councillor Ted Henderson, Cabinet Member for Children and Young People's Services, to move the report? Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Can I invite Councillor Chris Hood, Cabinet Member for Adult and Health Services, to second the report?
Thank you, Chair. In continuing our support for an all-age approach to autism, we can ensure that work goes on in County Durham to extend the scope and impact of autism support. We can work collaboratively with all partners to ensure that the voice of autistic people is not only heard, but informs the opportunities available to them within education and learning and their local communities. It is vital that people with autism also help us to plan accessible health and social care and that they can be involved in the important task of development training for our workforce. Through this collaboration, we can ensure that people of all ages on the autism spectrum have the opportunities, advice and support that enables them to live fulfilling and rewarding lives within a society that accepts and understands them. I'm happy to second the report and welcome further communication and awareness raising in the spring. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hood. Is there anyone else wishing to speak? No. Can we then confirm, can we then agree the report and the recommendations? Agreed. Thank you. I can confirm the recommendations are agreed. Item 8, Mainstream Primary and Secondary Formula Funding 24-25, Joint Report of Corporate Director of Children and Young People's Services and Corporate Director of Resources. Can I ask Paul Darby, Corporate Director of Resources, to present the report?
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. This report outlines the proposals for the local formula for mainstream primary and secondary schools for next year. The proposed formula factors to apply are set out at Appendix 3 to the report and maintain alignment with the national funding formula factors, having achieved convergence in 21-22. Members will see that the government is still intending on making the adoption of these national funding formula factors compulsory from either 2027 or 2028. But at this point, these are matters reserved for local decision making, albeit that the regulations place significant restrictions on what we can and what we cannot do. The formula proposed for next year is in line with the current formula, save for increases in the factors to reflect the additional funding being made available through the schools block next year. The formula applies to all schools, maintained and academy schools alike. The funding allocated to schools through the schools block formula forms the most significant element of funding for schools. Other funding, such as pupil premium funding and any targeted top-up funding for children with special educational needs in mainstream settings, are provided separate in addition to these sums. There was a mistake in the funding announcements in July, where incorrect pupil data was used by the DFE, which was corrected in October. Had the per pupil funding announcements in July been maintained, our schools would have attracted around £3.7 million more funding than they are projected to based on the updated October 23 pupil figures. The impact of this correction was to reduce funding available by an average of £58,000 per secondary school and £9,000 per primary school in County Durham. Based on the October funding announcements, our schools are set to receive an annual increase of 3.6% on the funding received in the current year once the mainstream schools additional grant, which was a specific separate grant in the current year, is rolled into the base, and factoring in £7.4 million of teachers' pay additional grant, which our schools will receive next year and which will be rolled into the core funding from 25-26 onwards. One school, Framilgate Moor Primary, is to be provided with growth funding next year, reflecting decisions made a number of years ago, and details are set out in the report. This will be the last year that this school will receive growth funding, and this proposal and the overall formula funding proposals have been subject to consultation with all schools and through the schools forum. No objections were raised to proposals included in this report. The formula factors will, however, need to be updated to reflect the final DSG allocations for next year, and the final pupil numbers and the final formula factors will potentially change marginally and be presented to Cabinet in February, when we'll be asking Cabinet to approve the final funding formula. Chair, the recommendations are set out at paragraph 15 to the report.
Thank you, Paul. Can I invite Councillor Ted Henderson, Cabinet Member for Children and Young People's Services, to move the report?
Thank you, Chair. And can I thank Paul and his team for the exceedingly good and the amount of work that has been brought to us in this report. The overall, our mainstream primary and secondary schools will receive additional funding of £17.6 million next year. A year-on-year increase of 3.6%, inclusive of an additional allocation of £7.4 million for the teachers' pay grant. It is disappointing that the DFE got its sums wrong when publishing their figures in July. Had they stuck to this in that announcement, our schools would have received an additional £3.7 million of funding next year. The proposed formula next year maintains alignment with the national funding formula published by the DFE, has been consulted on through the schools forum, and there is a quality impact assessment attached to the report. The formula will need to be updated in line with the final DSG allocation we will receive in the coming month or so, and Cabinet in February will need to agree the financial formula factors, which may vary very slightly. Chair, I am happy to move the report and the recommendations set out at paragraph 15. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. As Cabinet Member for Finance, I will speak to second the report. Can I also thank the officers for bringing the report forward? and I think we should all welcome the additional £1.6 billion of funding being provided to core school funding next year, which includes the roll-in of the mainstream schools additional grant and the additional £1.3 billion being allocated through the Teachers' Pay additional grant, which will flow into the schools block from 25-26. As has been said, we were estimating that we will receive around £17.6 million of additional funding for primary and secondary schools in County Durham next year, a year-on-year 3.6% increase. I hope this helps our schools in their budget setting where they, like us, are challenged with inflation and demand pressures at this time. Our local formula is already aligned with the national funding formula, and this is recognised by the Department for Education. So in that respect, the proposals in this report do not represent a significant shift year on year. And with that, I am happy to second this report and the recommendations as set out at paragraph 15. Is there anyone else wishing to speak? No? In that case, can we agree the report and its recommendations? Thank you. I can confirm that the report and recommendations are agreed. Item 9, any other business? I have not been notified of any other business, so that concludes the business for this meeting. Thank you for your attendance and to those members of the public who may be watching.